Okay, we're live. Hi, everybody. Lindsay here. This is Anna Turner. She is a sports dietitian with St. Vincent, and we are going to record a little podcast on nutrition.
Sounds great.
Yeah. So I've been told to tell my guests to just get all up in their microphone.
Sounds good.
Hi, Angie. All right, so today on the podcast, we are continuing our series with St. Vincent Sports Performance. We had Daryl Barnes on the show. He's an athletic trainer here. And today we're talking with Anna Turner. She's a sports dietitian. So welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. Super excited to be here.
Let's just get started. Can you tell us a little bit about your career and what you do day to day at St. Vincent?
Mm-hmm. So being a sports dietitian is really, really fun. We work with athletes that are high school athletes, college athletes, professional athletes, your everyday runners, triathletes, anyone who considers themselves someone that wants to get fit and be active. If they have nutrition questions, which, let's be honest, we all do, because we do not learn enough about nutrition growing up. So I think sometimes people don't even realize the questions that they have until they meet a dietitian. So we get to answer those questions and help them formulate the best plan to race as fast as they can, or just to get really healthy.
So I don't know if you know this about me, Anna, but I went to college to be a dietitian. Did you know that?
I did, because my husband follows your podcast.
Okay. But I didn't get into an internship.
Oh.
And so for a really long time, like years in my 20s, like that was a huge thing for me. Like I wanted to be a dietitian so badly. And at that time in my life, it was like the thought of going back to school and trying to repeat classes to do it just wasn't ever going to happen. So I think, if 10 years we were doing this interview, I would have been like so jealous and like, just like, oh, I wish I could do her job. And it's just kind of, you figure out, oh, maybe that's not what I was meant to do.
Absolutely.
This is what I was meant to do.
Absolutely.
I think it's the coolest job.
Thank you. And what's funny is I knew I wanted to become a sports dietitian, but I didn't know how to become a sports dietitian back then, because the sports dietitians weren't, it wasn't a popular career, and most of your professors told you that there were no jobs in it, which is not the case these days. So I actually worked for a food company for a couple years out of college in sales, selling products that back then were a hard sell, but now they'd be super easy.
What were they?
Because it's like chickpea flour.
Oh.
So I was a sales manager in the edible bean group. Super cool title. And so we would go to companies like Kraft or Snyder's Lance and pitch to them using chickpea flour as a gluten-free alternative, or just a healthy addition because it can add protein and fiber. So anyway, I realized that wasn't the life I wanted to live forever, and found my way to the sports side of nutrition.
But were you a dietitian when you were doing that?
I was.
Oh.
Yeah.
See, when I think about it, because now that I do the podcast and I'm, pitching sponsors a lot, like I kind of get this like high off of sales. And so I'm like, oh man, that sounds like a perfect blend. Like you get to do your nutrition stuff and get that like sales high when you get someone to jump on.
I think now, again, I think I was there in the beginning.
Yeah.
When people were still a little afraid of the foo-foo ingredients, if you will. So they're far more popular now, and I think they'd be an easier sell now. But it just frustrated me when companies would take and use the chickpea flour, but put it as like the last ingredient, and then put it all over the label to really market it, but it wasn't adding any nutritional value. So that was just really frustrating.
Because it was like lower on the list. Like they would use all kinds of other flour and just like kind of throw that in.
Throw it in as like a flavor agent, or just something to visually see. Like black bean would be one that they would use for visual. So it looks like it has like lots of seeds and beans in it, when it's really like the last on the ingredient list.
That's like the scariest thing. You don't actually know. And I know the rule, like the ingredient list, the first ingredients, that's how they do it. That's the highest amount. but I still feel a little bit lost when I read ingredient lists. Like, how much of this am I really getting? Even though I can read a label.
Sure.
It's just hard to.
No, like doing grocery store tours is one of my favorite things because I had that job.
Yeah.
So it's really fun. My husband might get frustrated because going to the grocery store takes a really long time.
Going to the grocery store with a dietitian. Okay. So specifically at St. Vincent, you work with athletes all over the spectrum as far as everyday to elite, all the sports.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Anyone that considers himself an athlete or just wants to get fit, we work with the whole spectrum, and not even just the state of Indiana or Indianapolis. We pull athletes from Illinois, Kentucky. We have telehealth services now, so that's nice. We can reach more athletes. Having grown up in a small town, had I known that I could work. From? Sullivan, Illinois.
Okay.
So it's a tiny town south of Champaign-Urbana.
Okay.
So I would have been all over this if I would have known about this growing up.
I know. I feel so fortunate that St. Vincent is literally in my back door. It's like such a state-of-the-art facility with the best staff, and I'm like, they're like my neighbors. Okay, so let's start off with a basic evaluation. Like, we'll just use me as an example. Mom of 4, a year postpartum, want to train to run a fast marathon. What are the things that you want to look at when I come in your door to say, let's evaluate what you're doing now to see what we can do better to get you healthier and faster?
Sure. So that is definitely what happens in the first appointment is really a full nutrition assessment. So when seeing Lindsay or myself or our fellow Tiffany, generally it's a 2-appointment process. And the first one is all about getting to know you, because we really have to go through all the layers to really build a good program. So obviously figuring out, what is your goal? Why are you here? What do you want to learn? And then what does normal nutrition look like for you right now? So we would likely go through a 24-hour recall. So walk me through what you ate yesterday, or a food log. We would want to know other factors such as any medical history, any diagnoses that you have, family history, race history, what have you achieved in the past, and how did you achieve it, any body composition information, food allergies. It's like 45 minutes of asking questions to help build the picture of where you currently are. And then within that first session, we usually set a couple really simple goals. So for example, I had an athlete yesterday, and it was really obvious that he needed to work on hydration. So, to me, that's super simple, and it doesn't sound groundbreaking, but it was very obvious that, he's only drinking a bottle of water a day. And even including his workouts, he's not consuming liquids during that time either, pre or post. So that was definitely one of the first easy things that we need to tackle together. And then, from there, deciding really what are his goals? Does he really need to work on his nutrition, such as how many times he's eating per day, how he's building his meals and plates, like the structure of those meals? Those are I would say those are the core. What your meal timing is and what's the structure of your plates. And then from there, we can start to build out what your meal plan looks like. But again, it could be as simple as we need to start with hydration, and maybe we start with adding breakfast, and then let's go back in 2 weeks and reassess how you're doing.
Can you give us your thoughts on this intermittent fasting craze?
Sure.
Because when you said adding in breakfast, I'm one that does not skip breakfast ever. And for years we've been told like breakfast is the most important meal of the day. I've recently been moving away from eating eggs because they're just grossing me out. And that was like my protein source in the morning. Forever I would have like a piece of, I buy that Dave's organic bread. It's my favorite bread, but it's $1 million a loaf. I know I need to go to Costco. Everybody, I know you can get 2 loaves for $6 at Costco, but if you just go to Kroger and you're lazy like me, it's like $5.99 for a loaf.
I just bought it yesterday at Fresh Market. Yes.
It's probably even more at Fresh Market. But it's my favorite bread. So I would oftentimes have that, an egg, and then I use vegan mayonnaise, which is so funny because I'm eating an egg, and then avocado. And so, but lately I've been grossed out by eggs. So I've been eating just like avocado on it. And I know I'm not getting my protein. So, can we start there? How would you add protein in that to that? Sure. To my avocado toast for breakfast.
To your avocado toast, I mean, I might do a side of Greek yogurt and blueberries.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Or do an easy smoothie that adds in some protein as well, to have a drink with some extra color there.
Yeah.
So that's a really great example of how do you build the plate and what are you looking for? So that's almost like a quiz question that I give to my athletes when they quiz me and say, how would I add something, or is this a good meal? That's often the question we get is, did I do a good job? And I don't want to be the dietitian that just says yes. Like, I want you to know how to do a good job. So that would be where I pull out a plate and show them the different components and say, okay, fill in your carbohydrate section, fill in your protein section, fill in your color section, which is what we call fruits or vegetables.
Okay.
And then you know that you have completed your plate. And those plates change based on where you're at in your season. So that's something to learn. Are you on the easy athlete plate, which would be known maybe as like your off-season plate? Are you on the moderate athlete plate, or are you on the hard athlete plate, which would be like race day, high mileage training, appropriate for that during those times? So walking the athlete through that nutrient distribution and how it aligns with your training is really important. And then empowering them to make the decisions to be able to fill in their plate, I think is really, really important and super fun.
Yeah, you know what I struggle with, I think, in marathon running is when you go on that taper and you decrease your mile. Like, I usually decrease mileage generally like 20% race. I still want to eat the same amount of food. I'm still like, my body is still like craving marathon training. And then post marathon for like at least a week after, I'm still like,
sure.
I was, after the New York City Marathon, I was eating fettuccine for breakfast. Like, I was like, give me all the carbs, all the food. So how do we manage that?
Sure. I think that could be two things. So there's another tool that I use called the hunger fullness scale. So this helps separate your emotional hunger versus your physical hunger.
Okay.
So I think sometimes when you've done something like training for a marathon, that's such a long time to be very focused and very good that I think sometimes we need that emotional release at the end of the marathon, right? That's where I see like your fettuccine crave coming in. As far as tapering, that's where I would have the athlete really dial into their hunger fullness. Excuse me, their hunger fullness scale, and really be able to assess, like, is this something that I'm just used to eating at this time because I've been training at this mileage for so long that this is my 4:00 snack before my 5:00 run, or am I actually hungry for this? And then we would also adjust the athlete plates as they taper down over those 2 weeks, and then adjust the athlete plate again going into race week.
Okay.
So
let's cover some just basic nutrition questions surrounding training for endurance events, like a half marathon, like a full marathon. I think one of the biggest questions I've gotten as I've coached runners over the years is like, what do I eat the night before? What do I eat race morning of? And then how do I fuel during? And I generally tell people for the fuel during, like, you need to take in nutrition every 45 minutes, give or take, depending on how long you're out there. So let's start with night before a big event.
So night before a big event, so we're talking like the dinner before the big event. So a couple things to keep in mind. quiz question for my athletes that after I worked with them, it would be, what are you eating the night before? And they would say, I'm going to use the hard athlete plate because I know I need half of my plate carbohydrates. So that would be their focus. And most of the time, you're likely going to be at a restaurant because you're traveling for this marathon. So when at a restaurant, they know they're looking for mostly carbs, a good portion of protein, and a present color, fruit or vegetable. The second thing to keep in mind is really making sure that it is low in fat. So fat slows digestion, and it can slow it greatly.
Okay.
So if you can think of a time where you went to a restaurant and you consumed a high-fat meal such as fettuccine or
sorry. That's not what I eat before the marathon, just so everybody knows.
Well, that's a good point.
I do know a really fast marathoner, though, my friend Lauren, who does eat that before a marathon.
Really?
She's like a 2:44 marathoner, too.
So everyone's different. Which is why individualized nutrition is so important.
Totally.
But generally, people have a high-fat meal really slows digestion. Mm-hmm. And so some symptoms that you could experience after a high-fat meal would be like acid reflux, an upset stomach, feeling like too full going to bed that night.
It's the worst.
Could have some GI distress the morning of. So all the things that we don't want to happen on the night before or race morning. So my tips would definitely be utilizing your hard athlete plate, being mindful of a high fat or low fat meal, and even, asking the waiter to leave off the butter on the broccoli or, little things like that, to make sure that you're getting in an easy to digest meal the night before, easy on your stomach, is huge. And then again, really tuning into your hunger, fullness, and making sure that you're fueling to the appropriate amount. And then even listening to your stomach later in the evening. If your stomach's growling before you go to bed, you probably need a night snack.
Yeah.
And then that brings me into race morning. So race morning,
what would you suggest for the snack?
Sure. For the night snack, I would go with some slow digesting protein.
Okay.
So like a Greek yogurt.
What about like cashews? That's fatty though?
So people often think of nuts and seeds as a protein source. And I think why they think that is because it's advertised like peanut butter for protein. And that's because protein's sexy, right?
Yeah.
So there is more healthy fat in nuts and seeds than protein.
Okay.
So as far as like building out your plate, I would put the nuts and seeds kind of in the healthy fat category.
Okay.
For a vegetarian, that would be different.
Okay.
So we could use it as a protein for a vegetarian.
But you're saying a high protein snack would be more like a Greek yogurt or?
Yep, a Greek yogurt. A lot of times we'll talk like smoothies using like Fairlife milk or higher protein milk. So we're saying slow digesting protein at night so that it's with you throughout the night.
Okay.
And that's what dairy is known for.
Okay.
Is that casein protein. So
what if you don't eat dairy? What's the substitute?
If you don't eat dairy, you could go with nuts and seeds and maybe do like an oatmeal.
Okay.
So where I was going was a protein and a carb.
Okay.
So a slow digesting protein if available, and then pair that with a good sustainable carb.
Okay. Like
some oats, and that would be an easy travel snack.
Okay.
To get you some good energy to refuel those muscles overnight. And again, something that works well for your stomach for the next morning.
Okay.
A lot of athletes have stomach problems the next morning.
Yeah, just you're nervous and you're going to have diarrhea regardless.
That's exactly right. So that's a really good reason to work with Dr. Carr.
Yeah.
At St. Vincent.
Yeah, he's a mental health.
He's a sports psychologist.
Okay.
So yeah, he helps you work through that so that the anxiety isn't having that happen.
Yes, that is tough.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know a marathoner, maybe my husband, other than him. I don't know many marathoners who don't get anxious bathrooms the morning of a race.
Mm-hmm. No, I totally agree. My
husband claims he doesn't, but I don't know if I believe him. But he he says he doesn't.
That's really good.
It happens to the best of us.
It does.
Okay, so now we've had our low fat meal with the proteins and the
Mhm.
carb. And then we have our snacks. Now we're at race morning.
So race morning, if you know you're the person that is going to have an anxious stomach and have a hard time getting down a breakfast or even a light snack that morning, I would recommend doing a bigger night snack the night before.
Okay.
So that's always step one.
Because that's like, will your body still be like using that?
It's
in the
still
morning?
there.
Okay.
It's already in your muscles. It's ready to go. It's through your GI system. So hopefully that's cleared. So that can be kind of like your pat on the back, like it's going to be okay. You fueled last night.
Okay.
So for the people who have really struggle in the mornings, if you have a solid stomach and you're good, then, going, ideally it's 3 to 4 hours for a pregame meal or
So
pre-run
hard
meal, right?
if it's like a 7 a.m. marathon.
Right. Nobody's eating at 3 a.m.
No.
So that's where utilizing intuitive eating and the hunger fullness scale can really help you dial in the appropriate amount for 2 to 3 hours before.
Okay.
So that's where I work with a lot of intuitive eating.
Okay.
Because everyone's different. So based on your body size would obviously determine the amount that you can consume and get digested within 2 to 3 hours before hitting the start line. So that's what we're looking for, is to allow your stomach enough time to digest the food so that when you hit the start line, it's not sitting there,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because if it's sitting there, it's going to sit there the rest of the marathon, or you're likely going to get sick.
Or you have to go to the porta potty.
Exactly.
See, I like that you bring that up too, because I think that a lot of people want a blanket answer.
Mm-hmm.
What do I eat the night before? What do I eat morning up? And it's just like, man, everybody's different. Everybody has different dietary needs.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm a vegetarian, but if you're a meat eater, like, your process is going to be different. And so I know that the individualized piece is so important. And I think people kind of want a quick fix.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I just want to know now and I just want to move on. But like, there is work that goes into knowing what.
Yes. So this is, it is on topic, but slightly off.
Okay, sure.
But it made me think of this quote that I have seen, and I posted it on Instagram last year. And it says, diets are like relationships. If you need to cheat to make it work, prospects are lousy in the long term.
Mm-hmm.
And so it kind of makes me think of that with just a quick answer, right? It's like relationships. Like, you don't just meet someone and instantly, like, I don't know, maybe you do. Maybe you knew your husband was the one.
No, I definitely did not.
But a lot of times it's some work and getting to know someone and really learning all those layers.
You might think you know right away, but those layers are going to come out later.
Exactly. And that's basically what I'm saying, is you can use that first quick answer, that blanket statement for everyone, but your layers, mm-hmm. your anxiety, your nutrition practices, your nutrient needs are going to come out later, and you're going to realize that quick fix didn't work.
Yeah. Anna has referred to these athlete plates quite a few times, like the small, mm-hmm. The easy plate,
moderate plate, and hard plate.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to link to her Instagram. I'll actually post it in the comments on this Facebook Live, and we'll put it in the link to the show notes, because mm-hmm. you have some really good examples of the athlete plates mm-hmm. on your Instagram.
Absolutely. Yep. And they are the U.S. Olympic Committee athlete plates.
Okay.
So that's also a resource if anyone wants to jump on that website.
And you're Anna, what is it?
Anna Turner _ sports nutrition. Okay.
So we'll link to that. And then I'm also going to I'm going to ask you for some images, and I'll throw up some of my Instagram stories as well.
Sure.
Okay. A topic I want to get into that we were talking about a little bit before we started recording is just, the viral video that came out with Mary Kane. And I think it's really important that this is coming to the forefront and we're talking about this topic. And basically, for those listening who maybe, I don't know how you haven't heard about it if you haven't, because I had people who know nothing about running texting me this article. Lindsay Krause did a really great op-ed with the New York Times on Mary Kane. Anyway, she's sharing her story about basically some really poor coaching practices regarding talking to her about her body and weight loss, and how she should be losing weight while training at this really high level at a time in her life when her body was probably changing. And there's just so much mental damage that is done on a young woman when this is not done the right way. So I would just love to hear your take as a female, as a sports dietitian. How should we be talking to these young women who are going through these changes and competing at a really high level?
Absolutely. I'm so proud of her and so happy that she did that. I DM'd her that day saying, thank you from all sports dietitians everywhere. Because it is really important to get that story out. So working with a sports dietitian is obviously step one. And educating young female athletes about their body and learning, what are the indicators of underfueling, and how does your body grow and adapt, and how do you grow as an athlete, I think is really important. And it's also, it is a female issue, but also I grew up in cycling and triathlons. And cycling, any body weight athlete has, that's always on their mind, right? So professional cyclists that are men or runners, I don't think it's necessarily just a female thing. I think that it escalates, and it's prevalent. But I think there are many wrestlers and male runners that struggle with that as well. And the issue is not having appropriate education and support. So I think that's something to just be aware of as an athlete, that there are sports dietitians out there and we want to help and are ready to help, but you have to know about our resource. So, that could have been you or I when we were young. If we were under the direction of a coach that maybe had really good intentions, but just didn't know any better, him or herself, because they didn't know a lot about nutrition, but they heard from some pro runner that this is what you do to be successful. So that's how those stories kind of trickle down, right? This was successful for this person, so we're going to try and implement that into our program. And I think most coaches have they want their athletes to do well. So I just don't think that they understand they don't understand the medical side of it and the emotional side and what they're doing to both of those.
Because what I think of when I hear these things are anything that is said by a coach or someone that you have the utmost respect for is potential to really damage your self-esteem, but also like your worth and your value, like based on what you look like. And I'm not just talking about Alberto Salazar. I'm talking about anybody who's talked to a young person who is going through like big changes. Like, she's in college, or I guess it was post-college.
I think she went straight to pro.
And then,
so she was in college.
But you're just in this like huge transition period in your life. So how do we make sure these coaches are armed with the resources? Like, there is no coach at any level that should be coaching runners that isn't referring people to a dietitian when anything comes up, because you're a running coach. That does not mean you have the expertise to,
Exactly. I think it's getting better. So Lindsay and I both belong to the CPSDA, which is the Collegiate and Professional Sports Dietitians Association.
And she's talking about Lindsay Langford, the other sports dietitian, not me.
Thank you. So if you were to ask, 10 years ago, how easy it is for a coach or an athlete to work with a sports dietitian, there weren't that many. There were only a few across the country, none of which were working with collegiate programs, a couple, and then now in the last 10 years, most collegiate programs of the Division I, like Indiana, Purdue, Notre Dame, have sports dietitians. So that is step number one, like getting those programs to have a sports dietitian, someone to support that athlete, protect that athlete and be there to educate that athlete about what they're going through, and also to educate the coaches.
Yeah.
I think that's huge.
Huge.
So that's definitely step one. But it's getting that same resource out to all coaches, right? So if you are a high school coach in Indiana and you need a resource, look to St. Vincent's to, have Lindsay or I come out and give your athletes a talk. Utilize our online resources, such as our online program. Like, reach out and find out how can you educate your athletes.
Yeah, I think that's huge. Can you talk about what you as a dietitian would do? I'm sure you've been in this exact scenario, but if you were working with a younger athlete, or it could be an athlete, in their 30s or 40s, whatever, who is clearly like too focused on their weight and maybe could be in a not great place. And how do you redirect that to performance over obsession over how I look and how much I weigh?
Yeah. So I think helping them identify just that, like, what is your goal through this? Is your goal performance, or is your goal to fit into a certain pair of jeans or whatever that may be? And if they indicate like, no, my goal is performance, I promise, like, okay, well, your nutrition assessment isn't showing me that, right? Your body weight is too low, which then alters your lab values. You're iron deficient now. You have maybe lost your menstrual cycle. You're not building bone. You're likely going to get a stress fracture. So sometimes that hard conversation of, here's the facts. You tell me it's for performance, but you are at the tip of the bell curve right now and you're getting ready to fall off the mountain. So you can listen and see the signs of what's happening, and we can start to go back the other way. Or unfortunately, I'll see you once you fall off the mountain and you have a stress fracture.
Yeah.
And then we can just work back from there.
Yeah.
Sometimes it takes that, unfortunately. But I think stories like this, stories like Mary Kane, she's the one that I'm going to bring up every single time I have that athlete that's on the tip of the mountain, and they're not trusting what I'm saying. And they're not trusting the science and what their body's telling them. I'm going to bring up that story and say, see, you do break down. Like, your body can only go so far. So if we don't listen to the science, then it's a matter of time.
Yeah. And you mentioned the bell curve. So I would love to dive into that specifically. I remember, even in middle school and high school, when you had the fastest runner on the team and then they go through puberty and they start their period or whatever. Because a lot of times when you're super athletic, maybe I'm saying that in a not politically correct way, but a lot of times you end up getting your period later. I did. So, and then you kind of slow down a little bit for a while.
So that's something
talk about getting through that.
Sure. So for parents listening, like, that's something to be aware of as well, is the age at which you get your menstrual cycle.
Yeah.
So if your female athlete has not received her gift by the age of 15 or 16, it's time to head to the sports doctor to get a physical done and work with a sports dietitian, because by that time we are considered late. And that can occur because of underfueling and overtraining. So it is common, but I think a lot of times what happens is parents are like, well, I was late, so she's late, it's fine. And it may be fine, it may be genetics, but it may also just be that she's a growing high school athlete and has outrageously high nutrient needs and is just not quite meeting them.
Yeah.
So that would be something to be aware of. And then from there, just educating the athlete about that transition and helping them understand their menstrual cycle. There's an app that's called The Fitter Woman, and the USA women's soccer team wrote about it and used it a lot this summer. And it helps you really understand your menstrual cycle and how that affects your training load and your recovery. So I think empowering them to learn about the science of their body and how they can achieve that science and not feel like it's weighing them down, or it's like the end of the world. I'm never going to race well again because I got my menstrual cycle and because I'm going through the change. I think being able to learn about it and empower women to succeed through it will help everyone.
Yeah.
It'll make my job a lot easier.
Yeah. And what about women who are well beyond that stage of life and they're just, you see a lot of women our age who are like, oh, I want to break 3 hours in the marathon. Oh, I want to qualify for the trial. So suddenly they're running 90, 100-mile weeks and they've lost a ton of weight just because they're running so many miles. And they lose their period. And like, how do you coach someone through that? Because that's just not a normal thing to happen.
So I think the most important thing is to be aware and to be logging your menstrual cycles along with your training log and your nutrition log. So training, nutrition, sleep, menstrual cycles for the female athlete, like those are the things that we need to log to really understand how are they correlated together, how are we adjusting them together. So as we're adjusting our training, our nutrition adjusts. If it doesn't, our menstrual cycle may drop off. As we adjust our training, our sleep adjusts. Hopefully we add more sleep, more recovery. So I think being aware of those types of things, all of the performance attributes that you need to look at will really help women understand that. What is hard is when you receive positive feedback from losing weight, right? You lose weight, you race faster. Okay, well, that was fun. Let's do that again. Lose a little bit more weight, race a little bit faster. So again, that goes back to the bell curve. At some point, you're going to hit the top of that mountain and you're likely going to drop off. So it's educating yourself and being aware of the signs.
Yeah. So
did you lose your menstrual cycle? Are you feeling some pain in your shin and getting shin splints again and you didn't have those 6 months ago? Are you having a nagging injury that just won't go away? Are you exhausted? Being aware of signs and how your recovery maybe is changing can help you figure out where is the top of that mountain. And then obviously getting yourself assessed by a sports med physician and a sports dietitian, we can help you understand where is the top of that mountain.
Yeah.
Right? Where can your body composition go? Where can your overall weight go? And not be detrimental to your health or future races.
Yeah.
So you may succeed in your race right now, but the marathon that you're trying to peak at 6 months from now, you may be sidelined for.
And I think the weight thing is such a sensitive topic. And to me, I don't really weigh myself. I maybe do I don't know, once a month I might just be like, oh, I wonder how much I weigh, and I feel pretty comfortable and confident. Like I know when I'm eating well and also indulging when I want to indulge. I know that running 35, 40 miles a week for me, feels pretty good to my body. It doesn't tire me out too much, but it's enough that I feel like I'm really getting a healthy amount of exercise. And that's just me personally. But there are people who come into a sport because they want to be healthier and because they want to lose some weight. And that's okay.
Absolutely.
And I think that we're scared to talk about that sometimes because weight is such a scary thing to talk about. But I mean, the fact of the matter is that people in America, a lot of people are overweight, and losing weight can be helpful to your overall health. So how do we approach that discussion with someone who comes in, and we don't need to talk numbers, but okay, maybe they need to lose 25 pounds. Doesn't matter how much they weigh, but just that would probably be a healthy amount to lose. So how do you talk to someone in a way that is healthy for you and them so that they're not obsessing over weight, they're obsessing over being healthy?
Sure. I think it's setting goals that aren't weight focused.
Yeah.
So setting process goals. So good hydration, good sleep, journaling emotions. I would say that being a dietitian, you're affecting someone's nutrition, but that's there are other ways in which you are affecting that, such as their emotional state, right? Journaling your emotions that may be causing you to binge at night, causing weight gain. Being able to identify things like that and help this person holistically feel more in control of what it is they're trying to achieve, I think is really important. And I think that alone, I think once they start some of those process goals, they realize that they're going to be successful, and it kind of takes the anxiety and worry out because they have the anxiety lifted, right?
Yeah.
They're not as worried anymore because they feel in control. They've reduced the amount of binges. They feel more in control of the decisions they're making to put food on their plate. They know how to do that. They understand intuitive eating. Yeah, I think any way in which someone can be healthier is important, but I think we would do ourselves a disservice if we didn't address the emotional state and everything else that affects your nutrition.
Yeah. It is. I really appreciate the holistic approach, that model. And that's one of the things I love about St. Vincent is there's someone in every area that you can talk to here.
Absolutely. So I have been at St. Vincent's now for almost 4 years, and I came from the University of Notre Dame. And that's what I loved about working there, was that we had all of the components, right? The sports med physician, the athletic trainer, the sports psychologist, everybody to be on the same page with the athlete. So we were just learning about every layer of the athlete. And that, like, being a small town kid that didn't have access to any of this stuff, that's what's so cool about St. Vincent's, is that what high-end universities or professional teams have for their athletes, we have here. And the high school runner gets to use them, or the local person wanting to run their best 5K. Like, it's so cool to have those resources and to learn about yourself, I think.
Yeah, and I do think when you bring up the high school athlete or someone that's going maybe to run in college or professionally or whatever, regardless of what it is, like, arming that child at a younger age to know what they need to know to be healthy holistically in their mind and their body, and to focus on what's important. And it's just never too early to kind of start that conversation. Gosh, it's like one of the hardest things as a parent is like figuring out how to talk to my kids about that kind of stuff. I mean,
absolutely.
You have a son too. And I often say, I don't know how differently I would approach it if I had girls, but I already, my oldest is only 7, I already try to talk to them about food. Like, this is fuel for your body. Like, it's great to eat it because it tastes good, but like, we are eating this because it's fueling us to run around and play and, do all these things.
Absolutely. And having children and being a dietitian, and working in sports, I've recently started listening to an audiobook called The System.
Okay.
And it's just all about college athletics.
Okay.
And the NCAA, and just issues that have, been a problem over the years, specifically with college football. But anyway, where I'm going with that is it makes me want to be extremely involved in my future young athletes' life. And just knowing the conversations with the coaches and how my son is going to be put through training. And I'm happy that I have this knowledge, so I'll know what's going on, and just be aware of the messages that he's receiving and the goals that he's going to have, and be able to help him achieve that. So I say that because I think sometimes parents may feel that they've done their children a disservice, and they're maybe afraid to bring them to the sports dietitian because they may feel self-conscious that they're not providing the healthiest meals, or they themselves don't eat super healthy. That is not the point of coming to see the sports dietitian. We are there to help with at the most basic level, general nutrition advice and education. So none of us learn enough in school, K through 12, about nutrition. So I think it's always a good idea to see the dietitian and to learn about nutrition and learn about it together, like as the whole family.
That's really cool. And I will be the first to admit I'm not embarrassed to tell Anna that sometimes I take my kids to McDonald's.
It's okay. They have to have a Happy Meal.
Yeah. And I think that shame too, though, people might be scared. Like, I don't want to tell you what I feed my family.
It's so bad being a dietitian at parties, and
it's
especially
probably really annoying.
holiday parties. Like, people think being a psychologist is bad, but no, being a dietitian, I think, is
like, I'm not judging what you're eating. Just eat the food on your plate.
Exactly.
My gosh.
Or people are judging me.
Yeah. Oh, sure.
Like, I want the cookie. Stop looking.
Let me eat the cookie. Well, we have so many other things we could discuss in this podcast. And Anna and I were actually just talking about perhaps doing a nutrition series where we can really dial it down and do specific topics rather than this kind of broad conversation. So if we do that, we'll pull for some questions. Did you have anything else? Oh, we got to do end of podcast.
What is that?
The end of the podcast questions. I forgot about this. But do you have anything else before?
The only thing I was going to say is we are launching a meal plan system in January. So that's something to be aware of. It's a really, really cool system that allows the dietitian to personalize your meal needs, such as your calorie needs based on your training. If you have specific needs, such as you are, celiac disease or type 1 diabetic, anything like that, we can vegan, we can customize it for. So I think that's, Lindsay and I are really, really excited about that.
So is this your app?
It is not our app. The app is called Eat Love.
Okay.
And the app is awesome because the athlete can also personalize it. So meal plans are great because they help you plan, obviously.
Yes. Every Sunday I'm like, Glenn, can we please plan for the week? And we never do. And just like last night, I opened my fridge. We have so many groceries right now. It's like a dream come true when your fridge is like full still. And I just stared and I was
plan
like,
on what to do with them.
Make me a grilled cheese.
Exactly. So there are meal plan systems out there, such as Blue Apron or Freshly, and they're very successful. And I tried out a couple of them while on my maternity leave. And what I liked about them was having a plan.
Yeah, it's just all there for you.
I loved it being delivered to my house.
Yep.
I loved having a plan. I loved pulling out the instructions and actually learning a little bit about cooking.
And then you can remember, if you're smart, you write that recipe down.
Exactly.
And you put it into your catalog.
Exactly. So what we are launching is like that, all the good components of that, but it's personalized to your nutrition needs.
That's so cool.
That was the one thing I didn't like about those, is that you couldn't personalize it for larger portions during marathon running and less portions during the off season. So the app that we have, we dial it into your specific needs. You can swap meals out, which is super cool, because if I've aligned you for, signed you up for eating oatmeal on Monday morning and you're like, no, I don't think so. You can swap it out yourself. So I love that because that puts you in control.
Yeah.
And when you're in control, you can't blame it on anybody.
Yeah.
You can't be like, well, Anna told me to eat oatmeal today and I'm not feeling that.
And you don't feel like, it doesn't feel like a diet, because it just feels like,
what do you want?
Yeah. What do you want? But let's be conscious about this and make sure that we're putting right foods in our bodies.
Exactly. So I love that feature. And then again, it links to Instacart or Amazon Fresh.
That's awesome.
So you can get it delivered, and then you've got the recipe to work from. It shows you the portions, so you can build out your whole family. So Glenn could have the appropriate portion for himself. You have your appropriate portion, and your kiddos as well. Yeah, I'm really excited, if you can't tell.
Is it like, what's the monthly cost? Or is it through you guys?
So that's what Lindsay and I are still working on.
Yeah.
It is through St. Vincent Sports
Okay.
Performance.
Okay.
So reach out to us on our website, Defining Sports Performance. Well, that's our Instagram. Defining Sports Performance on our Instagram, or myself, Anna Turner _Sports Nutrition.
Okay.
If you want to learn more, Lindsay and I are formulating those packages, and
Okay.
we should have that out by next week.
And I'll have information on that as well.
So yeah.
Okay.
Really exciting.
That's awesome. Sounds like a dream come true. Let's do into the podcast wrap. I got to get to Pilates at noon. 9 minutes. What's one thing professionally or personally you'd like to do that you haven't done?
Professionally or personally? Honestly, when I think of my professional goals, like my professional goals is to reach more people, reach more athletes, reach more parents, more coaches. And that happens through online, right? That happens through Instagram, that happens through podcasts, that happens through our telehealth services that we have.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're an athlete in Illinois, Kentucky, California, wherever you may be, you can still work with us.
Yeah.
So keep that in mind. And that is the part of St. Vincent Sports Performance that I want to explode, is to get us to more people and more athletes.
Yeah, because I feel kind of like
we're a hidden secret.
Right. And like, I just feel so lucky that I just have you guys here.
Mm-hmm.
But that's so cool that you can reach people that aren't physically here.
Absolutely.
If you could have coffee, cocktail, or tea with someone fun, motivating, or inspiring, who would it be?
So I had to call my husband on this one. I phoned a friend for that one. And he reminded me that I have a really deep love for Taylor Swift.
Oh, I'm into her.
If I think of the person that helped me through a lot of long runs and hard days, she would be the one.
Yeah.
So it's definitely Taylor Swift.
That woman is a genius. It's one of those things where it's like, man, her voice it's not incredible. Like, it's good, and she's perfected it, and she does everything she can. But
right. It's not Adele.
It's not Adele.
Right.
But she kills.
Mm-hmm.
Like, she just knows what to do with it.
Mm-hmm.
And
she's grown up through the limelight, which is really interesting.
And her voice has changed too. Like, I don't know, just for someone who has this talent, like if you just look at solely on her voice, she's not Adele, just like Whitney Houston or someone like that, Christina Aguilera. But man, she has just like, she's the total package.
Artist of the decade.
Yeah. I mean, truly. I love her. And then what is the best, most recent book you've read? I'm skipping a couple so we can.
No, that's okay. So for anyone that knows me, I don't really open actual books, but I love audiobooks because I can, as a mom, get actually a run in and listen to something. So like I said recently, I've been listening to The System. I'm someone who likes real life things.
Yeah.
So I often don't get sucked into fiction. It has to be real life. So I'm listening to The System right now and learning about the NCAA and college sports and just about sports and nutrition, and all of it's in there. So it's been a good one.
That sounds like something a lot of the listeners would be interested in, honestly, just based on our demographic here. Okay. And then what is your one message to send to the world?
Well, I said it earlier, but I'm going to say it again because my one message to send to the world is definitely just that quote, right? You need to learn about nutrition. So the quote of diets are like relationships. If you need to cheat to make it work, prospects are lousy for the long term, right? We have to start with education and a long-term solution. And just so many times nutrition is just the quick fix. So I just really want to empower people to make a dedication to learning and not just a quick fix.
Yes. Let's educate ourselves. We will do that because we will have a continued series with Anna Turner. Thank you for listening.
Thank you,
Anna.
Absolutely. Thanks.
Bye, everybody.